Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv. Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili, Gianarakos, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well, Yariv. Just in terms of the Flyers, they might not be doing so hot since the last time we spoke. Currently on a three-game losing streak. That Western road trip that typically isn't too kind to them every year, once again, is a little bit of a thorn in their side. They go 1-2-2 or 1-2-1 on that trip out west. So there's a lot to discuss just based off the trip and topics in general. So it's going to be a fun show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right, brother. Doing all right. Yeah, it was a little deflating with the losses, the overtime loss, and then the two, I guess, definitive losses. But just even watching the Flyers, they look deflated. It felt deflated watching them a little bit, but we'll get into it. So before we get started, just want to remind everybody, please subscribe, share, like our videos, hit the notification bell for notifications. Follow us on iTunes and Spotify. Give us a rating on iTunes as well. That's a humongous help to us. And also a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Go get yourself a cheesesteak. They are available on DoorDash. All right. Yeah. So as I was saying, Flyers looked gassed. They did start off red hot with a really great win against Vancouver right after the holidays. They did end up being 1-2-1 on the road trip. Kind of Seattle and then three Canadian teams in a row. I'm sorry, Vancouver, Seattle, and then two Canadian teams in a row after that. So they kind of were on the other side of the Americas. And by the end of it, they looked like they wanted to go home, right? Like that was definitely how it looked to me at the playing the Oilers. As we record this, the Oilers beat the Flyers 5-2 pretty handedly, at least in on the scoreboard. I don't think the Flyers played their, horrific game or anything like that. But, like I was saying prior to recording this, dude, that was the Connor McDavid show. I mean, he had 1 goal, 4 primary assists. The guy was doing Connor McDavid things. He was almost unstoppable in this game. And with a gassed Flyers team, or at least one that appeared to be a little bit gassed, definitely in the Calgary game. And then the game against the Oilers kind of continued. It looked like they just wanted to get out of there. I did think when they tied the game and came back and tied it 2-2, they were in a good spot. But then a late power play goal against for the Oilers, I guess a goal for the Edmonton Oilers on the power play. TK was trying to break the other way for a shorthanding goal. It was a pretty deflating game. At that point, it kind of felt out of hand, and they started the third period poorly. Didn't have any kind of control. And then Edmonton, obviously scored the 4th goal there, and it just kind of felt out of reach at that point. Though I do think the Flyers did a really good job not giving up. Obviously, they scored a lot of. They had a lot of shots on net, which I thought was really great. And they didn't stop giving up in that game, and I think that's the positive to take away from there. The Calgary game, what really frustrated me about that one, where I don't really think the Seattle game was frustrating. I guess it was frustrating they lost in overtime. But what was frustrating about the Calgary game is they kind of went back to the habits that really annoyed me, where they weren't shooting when they had opportunities to shoot. And I think that's actually what hurt them in that game. It was a lot of opportunities early on. I think they could have gone up early, even in the game, but they just kept opting for a pass. And I hate when this team does that. It's kind of like, oh, well, I'm not the goal scorer. You're the goal scorer. You're the goal. And it's like, just shoot the puck. So that's kind of where I was. And I think people shouldn't overread the Edmonton loss because, again, Draisaitl played very well in that game. But I would say if McDavid wasn't in that game, and obviously he's part of their team and he's a huge part, so it shoulda, woulda, couldas. But it wasn't like the entire Edmonton Oilers team was running amok on the Flyers. It was really McDavid. I mean, he dominated every single opportunity he had on the ice. He's skating like the wind, and it showed, in the stats that he put up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously for the road trip, they start off in a good place with that Vancouver win. That's 4-1 against one of the best teams in the league. And then from there, you kind of see some of the fatigue start to set in, right? Like they have to play a rested Seattle team on a back-to-back. and end up losing that one in overtime. Then they have the loss to the Flames there. And, in that Flames loss, they do show a lot of resiliency. That's even the same thing with the Edmonton loss with the 5-2, right? Like it's a loss where at a certain point the game's tied, at a certain point they're within one goal. But fatigue kind of starts to set in. Something to mention too, obviously not an excuse, but there is a bit of a flu bug going through the team. So you can imagine with the travel,
Yeah.
kind of coupled in with the road trip plus those types of symptoms that you're dealing with as a sick player. I mean, it's going to be tough sledding out there on the ice, especially if you're, going up against some rested teams like Calgary and Edmonton were. They were not on road trips or anything like that. An interesting thing for me, obviously, is if you look at the Flyers offense, at least over this specific road trip, a lot of it is relying on the transition play. That is something that John Tortorella mentioned that the team would need to kind of add to if they want to continue to have success throughout the season, right? Transition play and scoring off the rush is great, but as the games kind of get closer and you get closer to that playoff like mentality, it's really about grinding more, getting more chances based off of your forechecking and the work that your forecheck can do and kind of freeing up guys in the slot for opportunities, stuff like that. So I think a theme is from the Seattle game onwards. Once the Flyers kind of got to that third period, you did see some fatigue set in, and that's kind of where they lost. I would say all those games. Obviously, overtime in the Seattle game is what gets them, but I mean, Seattle ties it up in the third there, and they look like the
Yeah.
better team in that. Stretch in that third period. Even Calgary, right? Like Flyers are essentially tied going into the third. Calgary gets a couple goals in the third. They do show some resiliency to come back, but just that, third period play kind of burns them, not being able to keep up with the energy of the Flames. And it's the same thing really in the third period against the Oilers as well, right? Like they are in a good position, with two goals that are based in transition, right? Couturier flips it up to Farabee, who has a really nice pass to Konechny, and he finishes really well for his goal. And then Konechny finds Stalls a trailer for his goal to make it 2-2, and that's also a rush play. And then the power play goal really takes the momentum from the Flyers, right? And kind of gives it and puts it in Edmonton's favor. And one guy we will talk about later, that's Cam Atkinson, is the one who takes that penalty, right? So, a veteran player, maybe at a missed opportune time where you wouldn't want to take a penalty to end a period, kind of burns the Flyers there as Edmonton gets the momentum through that power play goal. Definitely not a time you want to give a team like Edmonton with McDavid rolling a power play to kind of end the second period and be able to reestablish a lead. And in the third period, the Flyers just didn't have anything, right? Like the legs were gone. They weren't really able to muster much offensively. Um, and then another theme, obviously, here for this whole road trip in general is just the power play. We'll kind of dive into it more, but specifically against the Oilers, right? They're 0 for 4 on the power play. And if they are able to capitalize on some of those chances, could be a different game. So I would say at least
Just
for
said that a
them,
few times this year.
there's Columbus on the horizon, this home stretch on the horizon. Um, Not like a terrible trip by any means. You do get at least 3 points on the trip, albeit that's I believe three out of what is that? 3 out of 16. So or three out of 8. Sorry, my math is terrible. But yeah. So the Flyers, I mean, they're going to need to, at least on their upcoming homestand, try to get more points than they just recently did to kind of stay in the mix here. They are still in a wild card position, but obviously with how close this division is, if you have like an extended stretch, let's say where you're losing and not getting points, you could be out of that wild card race and playoff mix pretty quickly. So it's actually an interesting time, I think, because we haven't really seen the team slump at this point, right? Like this is their first really extended slump. Like you see them have a couple losses here and there, but they always rebound. So it'll be interesting. I know the coaching staff has said like that's where you kind of see the growth of a team, how they rebound from tough situations. So I'm interested to really see how they respond here.
Yeah, man, I think those are all great points. And, speaking of responding, the Flyers do take the Columbus Blue Jackets on next, like you mentioned, and it'll be a good opportunity for them to kind of bounce back. Now, I don't expect Columbus to be an easy opponent or anything like that. Again, in my opinion, there are no easy opponents in the NHL. But, it's one where they're not coming in against a red hot team. They are at home, so they can get a better night's rest. I imagine we'll see kind of more energy and more pep to their step. And after three losses in a row, this team has responded well. And the one thing I will say, with being sick, with the flu going around the team, with the travel, I never saw them quit in those games. Right? Like maybe they didn't have as much as they did in the previous runs. But
Yeah.
they never gave up. And even the
Well,
Calgary game, they almost came back. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, if you look at the Edmonton game, that's really the only one on the trip where it's out of grasp for them
Right.
late. Like they're not in it, not having an opportunity to tie it. Like Vancouver, they win. Seattle, they lose in overtime. Calgary, even though they lose that game, they're right in it till the end, have an opportunity to tie it up. So
Right.
um to not be playing your best but still be there in all those games. I think that's the most important thing that you bring up, right? Like the team's still competitive despite the losses, whereas in previous seasons, a lot of these might have been blowouts or they might have been situations where the team's losing handedly. I think that's kind of the night and day difference that you
Yeah.
see that they
Totally.
do, even though they might not have their full game or their best game on any given night, they definitely seem more prepared for their opponents and what's getting thrown at them versus prior years. So I think just in the sense of like, okay, this is still a rebuilding team. They're still building on things. That's positive, right? Like you want to see your team be able to grow and be able to change those situations where, hey, in prior years we would have got blown out or this would have been a terrible loss. And you see this season the opposite of that, where hey, in these similar situations where we would struggle in previous seasons, we're not having those same struggles. Like we're still getting the losses, but at least we're more competitive on a nightly basis, right? Even when we
Yeah.
do get those types of losses.
Yeah, I don't expect this to roll into some kind of losing streak. And then after the Blue Jackets, too, if you get a good win there at home, you're going to be playing Calgary again at home. And that's going to be a pretty big game for them, right? It's going to be like a daytime game. It'll be pretty much an event. Again, they got to worry about rest here, and I think recovery is going to be a big part of it, but that's an opportunity for them to get redemption. And I will be at that game, but not covering the game. I'll be in a club box actually with a big group of my friends. I'm pretty excited about that one. I'm hoping they come out strong and respond well and try to get their revenge, because it's not like Calgary's a better team than they are. Not that they're not a bad team, but it's not a team that the Flyers should have trouble responding against. And same thing with the Oilers. I don't think the Flyers lost to any team that I thought would like. Again, McDavid is a complete X factor. If that guy goes off and you're having an off night, like he is,
And you can take advantage of any team in the league.
right.
So
And this is a team that has able to shut him down a couple times over the past couple years. But I mean, eventually the guy's going to break out against any team in the league, and it's not that uncharacteristic for him to have a 5 point night, which is kind of crazy to say. But you look at it, I think he was 1 point shy of 900 points already in the NHL.
yeah, I think he had 901 or even more to
Yeah,
finish the
he's on
game.
he's on track to like 2,000 points in his career or something like that.
Yeah,
So
it's nuts too. Just on the topic of McDavid before we kind of move on here, right?
sure,
Like he's third in scoring in the whole league with 53 points. Only McKinnon and Kucherov are ahead of him. McKinnon has 61 respectively, Kucherov 63. And it's nuts to see that he's, in that top three, considering he had a really slow start to the season, kind of had that injury that, they didn't really announce, but you could tell he was hampered. He was only
yeah,
really on a point per game pace like in the first 15 or 20 games, and he's just turned it on and he's basically doubled his point
the guy's
percentage,
incredible.
in the last little bit as he's gotten healthy here. But it just shows the skill he has, right? Like it's not like he started off on this torrid pace, but just to kind of bring it back around and get back into that top three mix for scoring, even though he was pretty much playing hurt to start the season, it's pretty unbelievable. But yeah,
Yeah, he's an unbelievable talent. I mean, he's the best player in the world. It is what it is.
yeah,
He is our modern day Gretzky, I guess.
essentially.
He's when
Just
he's
in
on his
point volume,
game,
right? Like
yeah,
think about how you can take control. Like any team, I think that was playing the Oilers last night, the way he was clicking, it would have been a tough one, right? Like 5 points, he literally factors in on all their goals. Not much you can really do.
you give him an inch of space and he will take a mile. I mean, the guy is, and again, with the Flyers not playing their best, he took advantage of it. So the Flyers do have a chance for redemption, which is cool. I'm going to bring up this stat that you gave me before we started. So the Flyers are 3 for 56 on the power play on the road this season. And, you mentioned that earlier as being a contributing factor to losing to Edmonton. It is an absolute killer about how poorly this power play has gone once again. And you can't help but see it as the team's large weakness. They haven't really had many, but the power play definitely is a big one. And teams ride off the momentum of killing our power plays. And it's deflating. And you see the way the team plays on the power play versus off the power play. And it's like almost night and day. It's like not even a benefit to be on the power play, which is not good. They just pretty much keep us to the outside. They wait for us to overpass and then jump on us when we do. And, you know, um, Tortorella mentioned on a previous interview, I don't remember how long ago it was already, but he mentioned how this team lacks a quarterback on the power play. And, to a degree, I agree with him. Um, I still don't think that would leave us being the worst power play in the NHL. Um, I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that they do not shoot on the power play. They do not play the same. They don't play the same aggressive, confident style on the power play, and they do not keep it simple. I mean, there are times where they do, and you see that success, and then there's other times where you see them just pass and pass and pass and pass. And it's the same thing that it pissed me off about the Calgary game, where you're in front of the net, you have a clear shot to take a shot on net. It's okay if it doesn't go in, and you pass it up for an opportunity to pass where wasn't really necessary. Like it's a tie game, or you have a 1 goal lead, shoot the puck. And that should be our attitude on the power plays. Any single time you have an ability to get that puck on net, shoot it. Now, having said that, Igor Zamula has had some time on the power play. He's had some success. I don't see him as the power play guy. I get why they're rotating him in there. There hasn't been much success. They're trying to reduce Sandheim's, big minutes. Um, but for me, it's York still. He's got the best hands of the D. He's had the best success, throughout his junior career. And I think it's something we'll see probably next year, more than this year, of him kind of running the power play as he develops as a player, because he's still pretty young. But what do you think about the lack of success on the road on the power play? But lack of success overall on the power play. But
Yeah.
the road probably makes it worse. And then what do you think about the power play quarterback comment that Tortorella made?
Yeah, sure. I think just in general, we really wanted to mention the 3 for 56 there just because it's so eye-jarring. Like that's a huge stat. And it's crazy too that it was actually 2 for 56 before the road trip started because they scored one on the power play against Vancouver. So it was really even worse. But they're once again, right, like last in the league on the power play. What I think it is more than actually not being able to capitalize, because I think at this point the team, not to say that they've given up or anything on the power play or what's happening there, but I think the team essentially has noticed that, okay, like, hey, we're probably not going to score on the power play. Like, we don't have a successful unit. We're not able to get it set up very often. But what takes away from it more than anything is just they can't even really get a lot of chances, right? Like, it's more just a momentum drainer for them and a momentum builder for the other team. I think that's where the issue really lies versus not being able to score or capitalize. Because if you're not going to score, you at least, at the very least, need to be able to, get some shots, sustain pressure. So when you get out of the power play, that can carry over into your 5-on-5, right?
Yeah.
But they're not even getting any of that. Or it's very rare that they do. And pretty much what happens is what I've noticed this season is, let's say the Flyers get, 3, 4, 5 power plays or a lot of power plays in a game, and they're not having the most success offensively at 5-on-5, then typically in those games, that's where teams will capitalize and really take advantage of them and kind of get the better of the play throughout the game. So for the Flyers' sake, it's really just figuring out, okay, if we're not going to score, we at least need to be able to set it up and get some shots on net
Yeah.
and try to build some momentum, because all it's doing is kind of draining from their 5-on-5 and taking away from the other areas of the game where they are, being successful. So that's probably the main thing I would say about it. Obviously, on this trip, I mean, it doesn't really help them. They go 0 for 4 against Calgary. They're 1 for 4, I believe, against Vancouver. They're 0 for 3 against Seattle. And I believe they are 0 for 4 last night as well against the Oilers. Um, yeah, they're 0 for 4 there too. So overall, like this whole trip, other than 1 goal on the power play in 4 games, not much happening. And I mean, for a last place team on the power play in the league, I mean, it's not too surprising, I guess, at this point, but it's somewhere that down the stretch here, if they're looking to, sneak into the playoffs, at least secure one of those spots, it's going to be something they're going to have to, at the very least, create some chances because it's draining other parts of their game just with the way the games are flowing. Like you can see them kind of like lose a bit of energy after those types of power plays. So it's going to be tough for them, I think, going forward with that. They're going to have to try to find something that they can do to spark it. Maybe Igor Zamula here as the quarterback will kind of be a bit of a spark for them. I mean, I think they have looked better with him as the quarterback, just in terms of facilitating what he can do with his vision. I know they have switched the power plays around quite a bit here. Like last night, they were working with some different units. It was like Zamula, Konechny, Couturier, Tippett, I believe. Um, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure who else. But either way, yeah, they
Farabee
look
got
pretty.
on there at times.
Yeah, Farabee was rotated on that second unit as well, which is good to see. I mean, and we'll talk about him later, but yeah, like you can see Zamula just at the top of the key, like he's smooth with his movements, he's fluid with his passes, he's not telegraphing anything. So I think with him they might have a little bit more success up there. It is something that he did in Lehigh Valley, and he was pretty decent at it before kind of Cam York took that role from him on the PP1, but he also had success running PP2 in prior seasons. So I do agree there that it's probably York's job down the line, or they're going to definitely give him more opportunities to do it. But sometimes skills can translate differently, right? Like if he happens to be a guy that's very effective on the power play, that could be a role that he kind of niches out for himself, where he maybe is, one of those type of power play quarterback type players where he might not be the best defensively. It might be a third pair guy on the defensive end of things, but he kind of gives you a bit of a bump on your power play. And that's one of his other skill sets that maybe makes him an attractive player to kind of have in there on a nightly basis. But it's something they're gonna have to figure out, Yariv, because I think the deeper we're getting into the season, like earlier on, we're kind of saying, oh, the power play stinks, and you're kind of all laughing, but the team's playing well. But I think the deeper we get into it, and these games start to mean more in the stretch run, the power play is really going to be an integral part, right? Like if they can't figure that out, they're going to lose games because of it. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It's something they have to figure out. We talked about this, for I think a couple of years already, that how important special teams is to making the playoffs and making an impact. And look, they kind of reset in the playoffs, but again, if you're not able to capitalize on it during the regular season, it's going to be harder in the playoffs. And they just don't have the process in place. They're so organized outside of it. It's mind boggling. And look, I'm not going to rip on Rocky Thompson. He's not the only coach on this team. But it's something he's got to figure out. I mean, he's got to be able to squeeze more out of this team on the power play and at least trend them in the right direction,
yeah.
because we have not seen that. And I hate the excuses of personnel. I hate it when Chuck Fletcher made those excuses. Oh, we don't have the right pieces here. And then, he traded away Jake Voracek for Cam Atkinson, even though Voracek was one of the best power play guys on the team, and then goes, oh, we don't have the right combination. It's like, dude, come on, man. Like, again, I don't think that they have the talent to be a top 10 power play team in the league, but they can be like 15 to 20. We said it over and over again. It's not a talent thing to be
It's
at the
more
very
just
bottom of
mentality, I
yeah,
think. It's
yeah.
just the way they're approaching it. Like they know at this point, I think they've realized that like they're not going to be a team that's going to burn you with these fancy cross ice passes or
But they have
yeah,
big shooters.
yeah, exactly, or these elusive type setups. But like we said ad nauseum already, all our listeners have probably heard us throughout the weeks here. It's just if you're not scoring, make it simple so at least you're not losing momentum because you're trying a play and it's just getting killed right off the
They,
bat,
they give
right?
up
You need to,
shots on the
well,
power play.
yeah,
I
you need
see it.
that's what I mean. I think they just need to simplify and just get it to the net. I mean, it sounds cliche, but nothing else is working for you and you're losing momentum trying everything else.
No,
So
no.
you might as well get shots on net.
How
And at least
many?
you keep the puck in the offensive zone, right? So
Absolutely. How many dirty goals have they had on the power play? Where it's just throw.
majority of them are dirtier
I
goals are.
mean, but not how many do they attempt though?
That's what I'm saying, right? Like I noticed
Oh, you're
they
okay. I see.
score, the majority
Yes,
they score end up being in that manner,
and
and
yet
then they don't
they don't do
continue
that.
with that.
They
Yeah,
try the
exactly.
cross ice stuff. They do the again. That's why I keep saying the overpassing. It's like, but you have a shot at the net already.
Create a rebound.
Yeah.
Even if the goalie can see it, like that's what I don't understand, right? It's like, okay, we know, let's say you're passing from like Zamula is passing it from Konechny to Tippett, for example, yesterday, and he's kind of rotating it between them in the key, right? On the triangle and the umbrella there. And there's certain situations where you're saying to yourself, okay, like you're rotating, and nothing's opening up. You might as well just take a shot because what's going to happen is these passes aren't going to connect. They're going to go the other way. And then you're either going to have to change units or you're regrouping and trying to
Yeah.
set up. And that's just taking away from the momentum of the
They,
power play. So,
they should just be firing the puck and they're changing units around. You know who your top offensive players are. You
yeah.
put them out there and you tell them to shoot. And I still do not understand how we haven't done that. I see no shots taken from inside the slot. That position that
Well,
Couturier was so good at with Giroux, that's almost never
my
attempted.
only other thought to, just taking shots and that cliche kind of answer that we're giving, but it's, what they have to do because nothing else is essentially working is if you're going to run the power play from the top, which it really hasn't worked for like 3 or 4 seasons now because they've either been last running it from the top or second last in the league, run it
Right.
from behind the goal line.
Right.
Because
100%.
why at least throw darts at the dartboard, see what works. You might not think you have the personnel to do it, but you don't have the personnel to run it from up top either.
I don't
And at
know.
least if
Morgan
you're
Frost would be pretty good at it.
Frost, Couturier, I think even maybe Konechny would be underrated in a role like that from
Yeah.
behind the net. But I just think at least two, if you're running it from behind the net,
Or
you
Farabee.
you also limit the other team's ability to transition up the ice, right? Because you're still going to have your guys that are back. Like your defense will still be at the point there, but like when you're running it from the bottom and from below the goal line, let's say you do have a missed pass that goes into the slot and the other team gets it. Like it's different than a missed pass at the top of the blue line. Now it's a breakaway. So
100%. Very well said.
at least if you're not going to score, you're not going to get scored on if you take that kind of approach to running it from behind the goal line. But I mean, personally, if we haven't seen it yet, I doubt they're going to try it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. So a couple things that went well, I don't know if it went well, but um Nick Delorier got benched. I'll get back to the Farabee comment next, but I think this kind of rolls into the Farabee conversation. But there were some lineup changes. There have been some lineup changes. Now we don't know why Delorier was benched.
Could be sickness. Yeah.
Yeah, Vasili, you were saying that prior to recording. It's weird that they didn't mention it. They also didn't go with Rhett Gardner, so maybe they just wanted 7 defensemen. Obviously, it paid off because Stahl scored in the game. But it was interesting to see he was sat. I don't think he's particularly played poorly. I mean, he's done what he's been doing all year. So I don't really look at his game and be like, oh, he's been benched. But, what I am hoping for is, kind of change the lineups up. And, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Noah Cates. But it was interesting to see he wasn't in the lineup. Hopefully we get some visibility on that. I
Yeah.
suspect it was him being sick, right? Because
Potentially, yeah. Well, I just find it weird. Like, okay, so let's say he is sick and you bench him due to that, and you get Stahl in there as a seventh. I just find it weird. You don't have Gardner go in there to replace Delorier, because if you are sick, wouldn't you want to be able to roll 4 lines, versus having to kind of plug an extra guy in on each line from the wing?
yeah,
But maybe like we're not there, right? So like my only thought, and I'm kind of reading between the lines, is who knows who is kind of dealing with this. So maybe the defense is kind of, having a
the
tougher
good
time.
point.
You add Stalin as the seventh because of that. Maybe
You
there's just
manage the
more.
minutes. That's a
Yeah,
great point.
exactly, right? So who
Yeah,
knows if that's the reason why? Because I did find it strange that you wouldn't want to do 4 lines, but you got to think about it anyway, right? Like maybe the reasoning too is okay, he's sick.
And Gardner's not that
Not the
experienced with the
greatest.
team. Yeah.
We'd rather have, a couple guys pick up a few extra minutes and kind of feel the game a little bit more. Sometimes that actually can help you out, right? Just getting a little more ice time, a few more shifts, kind of
As
gets you in
opposed
a
to giving
rhythm.
Gardner like 5 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. What's the like? Is it really a difference of giving Gardner 5 minutes or giving like Owen Tippett, Bobby Brink, Joel Farabee an extra minute and a half each? Like,
That I
you
think
know,
I think you might have nailed it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I think it's hard to believe that Delorier was benched under these considerations. You know what? Let's go into Noah Cates. We'll get back to Farabee. So like that's the one thing that I'm hoping is a positive from this, and we've talked about this quite a bit. So Noah Cates should be on the verge of coming
he's
back.
skating. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be back for the Columbus game or the game against Calgary. I'm hoping for that. That would be slightly ahead of schedule, I think. So maybe not. But we've been saying all year, like with Delory in the lineup, while he is a very good physical presence, he's not one of the 12 best forwards on this team. Like you just look at the lineup, he's not. And this team is a team that needs to score more. And I was thinking about it last night when we were playing McDavid. Like, man, I wish we had Noah Cates because Noah Cates can play defense against Connor McDavid.
yeah.
And we've seen him do it. And he's that good defensively. I've talked about this, or we brought it up actually a few episodes back. Where is the team missing Cates? And I think they are more than people realize because Cates wasn't performing offensively that great, but defensively his game is still there. And whether he plays wing or center or whatever happens, he's going to be a big impact. And I would love to see that fourth line, whether it be Paling or Cates or Lawton, on that fourth line with Hathaway. That is a legitimate scoring fourth line. With Deloria on it, he's not that capable of scoring. His shot's not that good. He's missed one blaring open net this season. And you don't really expect that from him. But I'd love to see this team be able to roll four scoring lines, which they have not taken advantage of yet this year. And I think Noah Cates, when he comes back, that's why I'm like kind of hoping he comes back for the Calgary game, though I think we would have heard something already. Um, I'm hoping he comes back because that would be a nice momentum boost for the roster and a nice
Yeah.
refresher because he is a high impact player and last year was one of our best players. So I do kind of look at Noah Case as a pretty exciting thing. And if Delorier was benched and not just sat because he was sick, I maybe there is a little bit of leeway there to open that up.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Cates and when he's able to come back. I think for Delorier, you're not really expecting him to score or anything like that. But as you kind of get into this stretch run where the games are going to become more meaningful, all the points that are on the table are going to be ones that you're going to try to want to grab because it's going to be a real, tight race at the end here to kind of get these playoff spots. Like you look at the Metro Division, there's about 5 teams within like 2, 3 points of each other. So it's going to be tight, right? And I would expect that, you'd want to have your best lineup out there, right? When you're kind of in these situations, or at least more often. So maybe that's the beginnings of what we're seeing, right? Like maybe the coaching staff knows that, okay, with this stretch run, we're kind of getting into a period here where we kind of need to have our best lineup in, if possible. I'm not convinced that that we're going to see Delorier benched for a long period of time or like a long stretch. Maybe we do start seeing a couple games here and there where they just try to utilize some other players. And I think we've talked about it before that the real benefit of doing it is that you can kind of use that fourth line. Like let's say you have a lot in, Hathaway, Cates, for example, or, a Paling, Hathaway, Cates, or something of that nature. They can score more. That's the first thing. But the second thing is that you can really use that as like a defensive first type of checking line that you could try to use against maybe a second line or even a first line, depending on what the matchup game is. So I think for the Flyers, it just frees you up for more matchups where not to say Delorier is a liability out there, but I just think you're less comfortable putting him out against, top six line than you would be a combination of Hathaway, Lawton and Cates, or, Paling, Cates, and Hathaway, for example, because, you've seen Lawton check top line or top six type players before. You've seen Cates check top line or top six type players before, so you know that they can do that. Whereas I think Delorier on a line like that, you probably look at it and say, hey, maybe they can, but do we want to take the chance that they get trapped out there? and then we get scored against, right? So I think that's the benefits and the negatives of it. Obviously, Delorier brings more of a physical presence. I'm sure a lot of guys on the team will tell you that, hey, having him out there gives us more peace of mind because we know something happens, that he's going to do something for us. He's going to be the guy to kind of stand up for us and help us out. And I would argue that the Flyers have had that mentality, but we'll see where it goes, right? Like maybe we see it happen more often here, kind of going forward. But I think we'll find out, at least in terms of Cates, like probably morning skate tomorrow. We'll see if maybe he's in for the Columbus game. And if not Columbus, I would expect Calgary on Saturday. But we'll obviously see. I think over the next week here, we shouldn't be surprised to, see Noah Cates return at some point. And it'll be interesting, to see who they end up kind of bringing out because I do think Bobby Brink's been playing well. Tyson Forster, though he hasn't been scoring, he hasn't really been making any like egregious mistakes or anything. It's kind of been a
I thought he played
status,
well against the Oilers, actually.
yeah, status quo, pretty good on the forecheck. So it'll be interesting to see like who comes out because I think Frost has been playing pretty well too. So like I don't know if it's worth bringing out three of those guys that might contribute offensively on a team that I mean they've been having some trouble scoring here the last couple of games,
They
right?
didn't have
So
trouble with hitting last game without the Laurier in.
yeah, that's true, right? If you bring that up, out hitting the Oilers, but I think it's going to be fascinating, kind of, to see just who they end up bringing out here as Cates comes back, because you can't deny the fact that even though the Flyers have scored well and at a decent clip this season, it is one of those things that they're probably a better defensive team than they are a scoring team. Just if you look at it right on paper
Hmm.
and things like that. So as the stretch run kind of begins and as the games get tighter here, like I think you want to have as much scoring ability as possible. And I would say having a Cates in your lineup or a Brink or a Frost or a Forster will add more to that element versus a Delorier. So
Yeah. Plus, there's a chance that Delorier might not finish his career here. You know what I mean? Where the other guys are all being built up. They're younger.
there's more of a
There,
runway with the team or more of a
yeah,
stretch ahead of them anyhow.
yeah. I
So
would hope that he's open to that. So speaking of young guys, we'll bring it back here to a topic we had a little bit earlier, but Joel Farabee. So the two of us have brought it up, I don't know, countless amount of times to get Farabee
yeah,
on the top line. The way he's played 5-on-5, it's kind of a no-brainer. He's second on the team in points. Even prior to the game against the Oilers, where he picked up 2 assists, and he finally got his chance. Flyers finally put him on the top line. I don't know why it took so long, and it honestly it worked. Not surprisingly, he looked really good. He's the right type of mix with the two of them. He's kind of like an all-around two-way player. You put him with Sean Couturier, you put him with TK. It just makes sense on paper, and the way he was playing, he pretty much deserved it. And that was my most exciting thing from last game is just seeing Joel Farabee's success. Obviously, Couturier, you mentioned earlier, had that nice flip-up pass, quick pass from Farabee, and then TK with that filthy goal in the 2-on-1.
yeah,
Um, and, I just want to make sure that they continue down that road. I think that should be the Flyers' top line here
yeah,
moving forward. Again, Farabee's second on the team in points. TK's first on the team, and I think Couturier's fourth on the team in points.
yeah,
That's
just
your
behind
top line.
Sanheim,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's your top line. Tippett has good chemistry with Frost. Maybe Brink is that guy, maybe Forrester's that guy, maybe Atkinson's that guy, maybe Noah Cates is that guy, though I kind of doubt it because I don't know if they're going to want to put Cam Atkinson on the fourth line, and they're definitely not going to want to put a rookie down there. So maybe a rookie gets rotated out with Delorier, whatever. But I really love what I saw from Farabee with that line. And I think that that'll be a big route to success. And that line, kind of led to the Flyers' comeback. And I think they're going to ride it out here. And I don't know if they're even going to look back because I think it's the right combination. I think Joel Farabee deserves it. He has not played poorly. Even the game where he was benched, it was so early into the game that it's like you couldn't even really say he had a bad game. It was like what was after his first shift, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think he only
So
had like 57 seconds or something like that.
right,
And then
exactly.
got benched the remainder of the game. But speaking of that and Farabee, right? Like after that benching, he's played really well. Like he could have taken it a certain way. And he didn't, right? Like he has still continued to play well. Essentially one of the Flyers' best offensive players, at 5-on-5 mainly, hasn't really gotten a ton of power play time, but I think we're starting to see that change. Like he's on the power play unit right now. I would love to see him get utilized at least with the one timer there. I think he has a really underrated one timer. We've seen him use on the power play in previous years, so maybe that's something they kind of look at. But just with Farabee in general, I mean, it's well deserved, right? Like he has points in 9 of his last 12 games. In those 12 games, 11 points. So 11 points in his last 12. That's 4 goals and 7 assists. Um, and it's not just, offensively, like he's doing really well with like the plays in transition, like the way he's just kind of bringing the puck up ice, whether that's him bringing it in himself and kind of finding a guy in transition on the rush, or it's him opening himself up, just really good positioning. But I also think like just the back checking and the defensive acumen as well, just like the play on the board battles, at least this season. And I think last season you kind of started seeing it later on, as he kind of recovered from that neck surgery, which didn't really give him a lot of time to train. But you saw him kind of get a lot stronger in his board battles, and that's continued over to this season. There's very, few situations, at least this season, where I see him get outworked or lose a board battle. So that's a really good sign. He's been one of the best play drivers for the Flyers so far. So it makes sense to put him on the top line. And it's kind of crazy, as you mentioned, right? Like Konechny tops on the team with 37 points. Farabee's second on the team with 27 points. After that, it's Sanheim with 25, and then Couturier with 24. So that top line is making up essentially 3 out of 4 of the Flyers' top scorers. And Joel Farabee's got 27 points in 37 games, 12 goals and 15 assists. So I suspect with Couturier and Konechny, the production
33 points for DK.
Yeah, exactly. I suspect with Konechny that and Couturier that the scoring will continue. I mean, they're two of the best play drivers and chance creators on the team. So to put the other best play driver and chance creator on the team with them, I think
don't know
they're
what
gonna.
took so long, dude.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a line that's really hard to defend against, and a line that's likely playing in the offensive zone more often than not. But I'll be the devil's advocate here. And I do understand actually when you're taking it into account. Like I was a really big proponent of having him up on the top line, and I'm definitely somebody who thinks they should keep with that for the next foreseeable future here, just because their scoring's been lacking a bit. They need to have a consistent line that can continue to produce offense, and that'll be it for them. But I understand it from the coaching perspective why they took so long, because they realize that he's creating as much as he is at 5-on-5. And they realize that when you remove him from the other lines, they suffer, right? Like, and now you have one line that's kind of loaded up with your 3 best chance creators at 5-on-5 and offensively. So I could see why they were hesitant to do it, because you're loading up your top line with probably your 3 best offensive guys right now. So maybe we'll see what happens, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised. Let's say if they do struggle offensively and it continues where it's like looking like, okay, this is kind of like a
Yeah.
one-line team. Maybe they break it up again. But I think for now, we'll see it kind of stick for a little bit, at least for the next, 3-4 games here. But yeah, I do want them to keep that Frost, Tippett, Brink line together, because I think they did have chemistry and they were showing the ability to score when they had them together earlier, and they kind of broke them up just due to, some of the defensive play wasn't the greatest. But maybe you kind of pick your chances with them, right? Where they're a line you kind of use more offensively, because none of those guys, Frost, Brink, or Tippett, are like the best defensive players. So maybe you kind of use them more of an offensive role, offensive zone starts, and you kind of give your top line and, Lawton, Atkinson, and potentially like a Cates or something like that, or a Paling. Maybe you give them more defensive starts because they can kind of work their way up ice. So maybe it's kind of you got to manage it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But you use that combination, because why not put your 3 best offensive players at 5-on-5 together and see what they can kind of do for you, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. The only caveat I would say to that is like, why put Tippett on the top line then? You know,
Yeah, for sure.
especially when he was like kind of red hot and he was having chemistry with Frost. So it's like, but I do see your point. That could be. I think they just kind of underappreciated what he was doing a little bit, and then his production just kept going up and up. And I think they were just like, well,
We're forced to do it. And I think it's
yeah,
also just an earning it thing too. Maybe they wanted to see him kind of earn his way into that top line role, which he did do. I mean,
yeah,
right? Like if you look at his 5-on-5 production, no power play time, like he earned it. Just look at the point production, right? He's second on the team in scoring behind Konechny. So why not give him the opportunity?
yeah.
And he was putting up majority of those points, not playing on the top line.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be an adverse effect because now he has to play against those top defensive pairs and stuff like that. But I don't imagine that it's going to really be much of a hamper to his game. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, next on the topic was TK just being on fire. I don't think we have to spend too much time on this because we talked about TK, but man, can the guy play? I mean, he's somewhat sick, is a questionable for one game, scores in that game, scores a huge goal last night, gets another assist. Just every single night, this guy's a threat. And for all the people who question whether, last year was a fluke and all that, it's obviously not. He's even hit a level above that. And it's crazy to think that he's putting up this production without a successful power play. Can you imagine what kind of points this guy be putting up if the power play was even halfway competent? I mean, you're talking about a guy who'd be over a point per game at this point with a competent power play. Um, and it's been a little bit crazy. And part of me wants to like even try Frost on the left wing with Couturier and TK to be like, well, what if we just give him like a pure playmaker to play with,
And
who
set
can
him
just
up.
set him
That'd
up?
be interesting. Yeah, if you have Kate's kind of slide back in the middle or
Having
something.
said that, Farabee's done a really good job playmaking this year, and it showed with the 2 assists last night. But anything else to add on TK? I mean, the guy's just, you know, he's our star. He's like our offensive star right now.
Well, I think just look at the point totals, right? Like 33 points, 37 games. He's right there, close to that point per game mark. I imagine he's going to finish, between the 70 to 80 point range. And just for what he's getting paid, 5.5 million right now. I don't think there's really much you can kind of look at and say, hey, like we need more from this guy. What I'm interested to see with Konechny is going to be because he's going to be eligible for that contract extension. So I kind of just am wondering, okay, what's that next number going to look like? Kind of coming off even better seasons since before he signed that contract. So it's going to be interesting because he's been the Flyers' best offensive player, so they're going to have to pay him like it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the cap going up, and again, Cam Atkinson might be on the outs, in the off season. Um, I think that's where you kind of get you make the money with it. The Flyers will have roster decisions, and with Cutter Gauthier coming, it gives them the ability to move forward. So, I suspect like this team is still a work in progress. They've done really well. It's not about blowing up the team as they fight for a playoff spot, but it's about next year and how you plan around that. So, um, we'll see what they do. So, speaking of which, Cam Atkinson continues to struggle offensively, though I think his struggles have been more just one, he's taken some bad penalties, some bad luck. He had kind of a bad luck penalty yesterday. So you see the frustration, but it's been more just finishing. Um, and I'm not sure what happened there. Like, you brought up the topic, is it his injury? I don't know if it is. To me, it looks more like just kind of in a rut. Like he's had some really good scoring opportunities. He's had some breakaways. He's just been shut down on them. And even Farabee had a breakaway last night too, where he probably would have changed the game if he would have scored on it. Um, and it just didn't happen. I feel like that's been Cam Atkinson's second half of the early season is that, the first half they were going in, second half they're not. He had some games where he didn't play as well, but I don't necessarily think he's played poorly. I think it's just more just bad luck, and I could see him kind of getting out of it in a spur and getting, a few goals in a row. Just like goal scorers are streaky. But he does need to kind of get it together because he is kind of falling down the depth chart as far as
Yeah.
productivity for sure. And this is a guy we kind of heavily relied upon for extra scoring, especially on the power play, which maybe that's why he's had trouble scoring. Power play has been almost irrelevant.
Yeah, he obviously hasn't had a chance to get any goals there, but it's basically a tale of two tapes for him, right? Like in his first 15 games, he has 12 points and 8 goals. And since November 11th, that was the last time he scored. It's been 22 games, and in those 22 games, he only has 6 points. So it's obviously not ideal.
Was that one
Um,
one goal and five
he has
assists?
no, all assists. So in
All
22
assists.
games
Yeah.
since November 11th, he has not scored a goal.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something where it could just be one of those things like really bad slump. Once you get the one goal, you kind of get the monkey off your back and you see them start to go in again. The only thing that I look at with him though, where it's kind of like I said, tale of two tapes. Like he looked a lot more engaged, kind of getting closer to the front of the net. Like a lot of his goals were greasy type goals, right? To like score in the beginning of the season. And I just feel like he hasn't been getting to that area as much. So that's where I kind of look at the injury and say, hey, like you come back after a
Might be.
year off and you kind of have that adrenaline to start the season. And then when that kind
Sure.
of wears off, you kind of are seeing the way that he's playing now, where it's not to say that he lacks like an energy or anything like that, but he does just seem a little bit like it's almost a step behind where like he needs to make a pass at a certain time and it's like a second late, or he's coming in to take a shot and he should have shot it like a couple seconds earlier or something like that, where just
Yeah,
the timing seems to be a little bit off and that kind of throws off the chance that he is getting.
you might be
um
right.
and then the last couple of games, I mean, he did have a stretch there where he had like 5 or 6 games in a row where like he had breakaways and didn't score on them. And then you're thinking to yourself, hey, like he's getting breakaways, right? Like, so at some point, something's going to have to drop. And then at this point, at least on this road trip, I didn't really see him create much at all offensively. So I'm wondering, if with a guy like Cates coming out, or not coming out, but a guy like Cates coming back, maybe do we see Atkinson get sat here? Because even Tortorella's mentioned that for him to help us, he needs to start scoring, and that would definitely kind of go to the theory that hey, like everybody's equal in this locker room, right? Like if you're
Yeah,
not pulling your weight, you have every opportunity to potentially be scratched. And I think if you're looking to kind of go and kind of cement that philosophy, that meritocracy type system that Tortorella has kind of put into place here for the last 2 seasons since he's been the coach, I think a move like that would be beneficial for him.
it could spark it.
That too, right? Like you show your locker room, hey, look at this guy who's scored, 40 goals in the league. He can get scratched too, right? Like it doesn't matter if he's not playing well, like it can happen as well to him. So I think that gets you points in your locker room just in terms of building as a team. And it also could be a spark for Atkinson. Like, when was the last time he's gotten scratched in his career? Probably back to his early days in Columbus, where they, him and Torch maybe didn't see eye to eye to start off, right? So it could be a motivator, and I wonder if that's a card that he ends up pulling here at some point. But it's going to be interesting with Atkinson because I think if this play continues, like where, let's say the remainder of the season here, like, what I'm not sure exactly where the Flyers are, but like there's about half a season left, and let's say he only gets like 5 or 6 goals for the remainder of the year. I think he's definitely, if not a buyout candidate, somebody they're probably going to try to trade, especially with just the wing depth that's coming up in the
I
organization.
I can't see it being bought. I can't see him being bought out just because of the type of term it would add to those buyouts, and they already have two, and they might have to buy out Pedersen, but um, the benching I definitely think is out there, right? And we
Yeah.
talk about who's going to be benched for Cates, and I could see him getting a game if it continues. Just to again use the same logic used with everybody else, let him look at the game from top and kind of reset. And Coots has had some practices off and
Even
some
games
days
off.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Atkinson is not. So I don't know. It's just interesting point. So we'll see what happens with Atkinson. I think we all want to see him kind of take off again because not only that, it raises his trade value
Yeah, but he's
in the
also
off
just
season.
I mean, just a caveat from hockey, like he's a really nice and likable guy, right? So like you never want to see a player, especially coming back from such a lengthy injury, kind of be a shell of his former self, right? So
Yeah,
like hopefully it's just a real extended slump and you kind of see him get back to normal here, but
yeah,
if it's not, I mean, that's just the nature of the game sometimes, right? Like as you age and get a little bit older and the injuries start to pile up here for him, sometimes this can happen. So
yeah. Another trade that I thought wasn't necessary to trade away Voracek for Atkinson, but what do I
well,
know?
either way, hey, if they had Voracek right now, he'd be on the long-term injured list too, maybe. But who knows, right? If maybe you don't trade him, that concussion stuff never happens. So
Yeah. Just one of those moves that Fletcher made where I was like, okay,
did it move the needle? Did it really do
no,
anything for you?
no. And in
Yeah.
fact, I would argue they got the worst player. Even though I do like Atkinson, even in his prime, Voracek was always a better player.
Yeah,
People here were
agreed.
just harsh on him. All right. So just want to remind everybody, please to like and subscribe, follow us on iTunes and Spotify, give us a rating on iTunes. All of that is a humongous help. So we'll do a little bit of a Phantoms update. There's not too much to update. I'll say this: the Phantoms still have not been very consistent. They'll come in with a big win, and then they'll lose the next night. They'll score one goal. It is a question of how long Lappy will continue to be the coach of this team, in my opinion. I think we both said that already. Um, I don't know if I'll be happy to see him gone or anything like that, but I just, it's a little bit of a head scratcher that this team, with the amount of talent that they have on it, isn't more successful. I don't think the Flyers are jumping to get rid of Lappy in any kind of way, and I'm hoping that he stays within the organization if they do move on from him as head coach. But part of the consequence of that has been Alexis Gendron has been assigned to his QMJHL team. So he's going back to juniors. Um, though he did have some success playing on the fourth line. Again, he's not a fourth line player, but he did score some nice goals this year. I think he had 5 goals this year in 20 some games. So it's actually really not that bad. No
Yeah,
assists.
5 goals in 17 games played.
Yeah, and 17, which is really not bad at all for a rookie. So the scoring touch is definitely there, but I don't think they really want him to be playing on the fourth line in the AHL. I think for his development, it's probably the smart move. I'm sure he's not happy about it, but he'll be back with the team next year, and it gives him a chance to get bigger, stronger. He got a taste of what's to come, and I suspect that he'll come in more ready next year. And I think at the very least, he's going to be a high impact AHL player, big time goal scorer in the AHL. We'll see if he can translate that to the NHL. But things are going okay with the Phantoms. Not too much to write home about outside of some guys having really good offensive years, and then Tuamala was taken off that line, and now productivity has gone down. They had that one big first period, and that was pretty much it. And Tuamala hasn't put up a point since. Um, and yeah, I thought that was a mistake. And I really want to see how Lappy responds here, but he can't get the team on any kind of winning streak at all. It's like they
Yeah.
win one, they lose one, they win one, they lose one. And I'm a little surprised. They have two NHL caliber goaltenders. They have a slew of veterans and young defensemen on D. They have plenty of scoring up front at the AHL level. Denoyer, isn't putting up better numbers than last year. I just look at all these things combined. I'm like, it might be time for a new coach in the AHL.
Yeah, I think it is head scratching and puzzling, kind of the Tuamala move, like just
Hmm.
changing up that top line. You have so much success. It's basically your only offensive threat. So why make the change, right? Like maybe you want to shake things up, but it hasn't done much, right, in terms of that. So it is a little bit interesting to see them do something like that. I think for LaPerriere, it might just be the classic situation of, it's time, for a change, right? Like you look at hockey, no coach lasts forever. I mean, he's been the head coach of the Phantoms now for, I believe, 3 seasons. I think even maybe more, if I'm not mistaken. So at a certain point, even if it is an AHL and it's a developmental league, you also want to have success in that league with your young players, right? And I think we've said it before with the roster that they have and the talent they have on that roster, they shouldn't be as bad as they are right now. So maybe that does end up sparking a change. I wouldn't envision or imagine it's going to happen at this point in the season. I think if they were going to try to fire a coach and kind of salvage something, it would have been a little earlier where you have to do that. I think doing it now just ends up kind of putting you in a further hole, having to learn new systems and kind of get accustomed. So I think LaPerriere is probably a guy you're going to see ride it out for the remainder of the year. But if the Phantoms don't make the playoffs, I mean, I would expect him to maybe not get let go from the organization, as we've said before, but maybe move to a different role.
Yeah,
And kind of not be the coach, because I think just with the talent that you have, to not be able to make the playoffs after making the playoffs last season, where you probably had less talent, to be honest, and
right.
maybe you take away Brink and Forrester, sure, but you're adding in a bunch of other prospects that
Brink
um,
came in halfway through the season,
yeah, exactly. But
coming off a huge injury.
a Tuamala, you're getting a Brooks back, you're getting even a Wade Allison down
Andre,
there. Yeah, Andre Tanner Lazinski is healthy and can actually play for you this season versus last year where he was hurt. So I think you lose a couple guys, but you get a bunch of other guys that should kind of be able to make up for that. So I think it's definitely puzzling to see them play in this way. So hopefully, I mean, they can get it back on track, but not good signs. And then for Alexei Gendron, I think it's just getting him playing time, right? Like he's only
yeah,
played 17 games. He isn't playing every night. He's a young guy, 20 years old. He's still eligible to go down as a 20-year-old and play in the QMJHL. And Drummondville has a good team. So why not send him back? And,
He's going to be one of the best players in
he's
that
probably
league,
going to be a goal a game again
maybe
for the
more.
maybe more, right? For the period that he's down there. So why not at least get him feeling good about himself, get the confidence up, get him back to that kind of goal scoring mentality. And then I think next season you're really going to see him, top six role in the Phantoms. That's where he needs to play to have success.
At least top
So
nine.
yeah, exactly right. I think the fourth line and just not playing that hurts development of a young player. So why do that?
Yeah.
When he can go down and play kind of every night here.
Yeah. And Avon has been taken off with the Phantoms, right? If anything, the positive with the Phantoms this year has been the rookies.
Yeah.
Gendron scoring 5 goals that's not bad at all.
No.
And then Avon's had got 7 plus some assists. Tuamala was killing it up until very recently, but it's still killing it. Andre is heating up. He has not stopped putting up points. So like the rookies have done well. And look, you're developing these young players, and not that I'm not going to say Lappy's bad at it or anything like that, but if you can bring in another coach that, just like I was saying about before, you want to get the most out of these guys, and it doesn't necessarily seem like that's the case for everybody down there. It seems like the veterans are doing it, what they need to be doing, but some of the young guys are not. You can either blame the coach or blame the players, probably both. But it's also not a bad idea to just change it up, and maybe it'll bring some new energy to that locker room, where players think, hey, they get to start with a brand new slate with a new guy, maybe a guy who used to coach in the NHL, who can bring some of that experience of coaching, head coach job at the NHL, like they had with Gordon. With Scott Gordon, he was a very good AHL coach. So bringing somebody in on that caliber, even on for 1 or 2 years, I think would be a big boost. Um, Especially if there's a chance that Cutter Gauthier plays down there, which I don't think is going to happen. I personally, I can't see it happening. Um, all right, so let's get into our prospect updates and let's talk about Cutter Gauthier. So, Team USA is still in it, I believe, as we record this. Canada was eliminated. We'll talk about that when we talk about Bonk. But USA is still in it, and the really nice thing about Cutter is that with 1 goal and what is it? Yeah, 9 assists
Assists.
in 5 games, +6, which again, racking up a lot of points against teams that are not as good. But this is a guy who went in as just a goal scorer, which I didn't believe to begin with. Playing top line center and assistant captain for the team. Team USA has looked really good. And he's coming in just putting up points. Again, he leads Team USA in points right now. I'd like to see him score
Leads
some
the
more.
World Juniors in points, Yariv, to
Thank
correct you
you.
there.
Thank you. That's a great correction, actually. So we're getting what we wanted from Cutter Gauthier. And again, this adds more into what I'm saying, that again, how many prospects you see in the league that do what they're doing like he's doing and go into the AHL? Some, maybe, but it's, pretty high chance considering he's going to come in at 20 years old, that he's not going to be playing in the AHL. Maybe he'll play at the end of this year, though the way the Phantoms are going, if they don't make the playoffs, he can't. So, but it's really great to see. And Cutter Gauthier, setting up goals, playing on the top line. It's what we want to see him playing center. It's pretty much, he's had the type of season we were hoping that he would have. He's dominating World Juniors. He played really well with the men in the Von Holinka tournaments in the offseason. He's one of the top point producers in the NCAA. He's probably going to be playing in the Frozen Four. All of these things are kind of coming together. And Cutter Gauthier, if we did not have Michkov, part of this organization, would be the talk of the town. And he really should be, because he's probably going to make a really large impact just coming into the NHL immediately. And he is that type of prospect that can at least compete for Rookie of the Year. I don't know if he's going to win Rookie of the Year. There's always tough competitions every season. But again, he's a guy who I could see coming into the NHL and putting up 20 goals. 20 goals,
Yeah.
40, 50 points. I think that's what we could see from him, maybe potentially even more if the team is rolling offensively. And the fact that he's able to do kind of it all, which I already kind of suspected, could help our power play, as we were talking about.
Yeah, I think Gauthier, just look at him on the power play and the way the US kind of utilizes him there. That's going to be a benefit for the Flyers, right? We've already seen it. in college with him, obviously, that like the power play in college runs through him. Um, the US power play here runs through, Lane Hudson and Cutter Gauthier, which makes a lot of sense, right? You have Hudson, who is a really elite passer, great vision. You have Gauthier with an elite shot and a really great shot, but it's something we actually haven't really seen him capitalize on, as you kind of alluded to, Yariv, right? Like he leads the tournament in scoring with 1 goal and 9 assists. And it's crazy to think that, he only has 1 goal and the 5 games that essentially he's played so far. And in 17 games in college this season, he has 13 goals. So it's like he's almost flipping the script and kind of showing, like you said, that he can do it all in the
Yep.
sense that, hey, like in college, he's this goal scorer. Right now in the World Juniors, he's been a setup man here. But one thing I saw that was an interesting kind of take that was online is that, on Boston College, his line mates aren't the most talented. So maybe, on the World Junior team with some more talented guys around him, maybe he feels kind of more obligated to kind of be a passer
I
versus
mean, he's
kind of
setup
be,
man. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Where I think in college, not the most talented guys around him because he's not playing with your Perot and your Will Smith and your Leonard. He's playing with other guys on the team. Maybe he thinks to himself, hey, time for me to be more selfish here. I'm the most talented guy on my line. I'm going to kind of have more of a shooter's mentality. So maybe there is more of a difference when you put him around more talented guys, which is obviously a good thing to see because it's never good as a player to be a one-dimensional type player, right? You want to be able to have different facets to your game. And I think Cutter's definitely showing that just with the passing prowess that he's kind of been putting to display here, just with the 9 assists in the 5 games and the 10 points overall lead the tournament. But yeah, it's impressive to obviously see the fact that, against men at the World Championships, he's one of the top scorers of that tournament. He's leading this tournament in scoring here. And I'd imagine if the US gets to the finals, he probably will end up leading the tournament here in scoring. But yeah, like right now, he in the top 5, he has Petrovsky behind him with 9 points, Frank Mazar behind Petrovsky with 9 points as well, Gavin Brindley with 8 points, and Macklin Celebrini to round out the top 5 there with 8 points. So I think he'll have a really good chance here to finish actually as the leader because Czechia, and
Mhm.
Sweden are the other 2 teams that are in the tournament, along with Finland, who the U.S. Will be playing as the listeners are kind of taking this episode in here. So we'll see what happens. But just in that top 5 there, or in that top 5, there's only one other player. Or a couple other players, like the or the Slovak players are all eliminated. Gavin Brindley's obviously on the U.S. team. Macklin Celebrini is eliminated. Then Kulik there, who plays for the Czech team, will still be in the tournament. So we'll see what Gauthier can do, but it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens here. And it definitely be great for him as his experience to get to a finals. The final 4 here for the World Juniors is Sweden, Czechia, and the U.S. versus Finland. So we'll kind of see how it shapes up tomorrow and what teams make it through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting. It's really exciting. And I think US has a really strong chance to win this year. So, especially with Canada being out and
I'm
getting upset
predicting
early.
them in Sweden as a final, and
Yeah.
then the U.S. kind of taking it. If you have to put anything on the line here, what are you thinking, Yariv?
I hate underestimating Finland and Sweden because they are tricky teams to beat. They
Yeah,
always play so well defensively, but I think USA has got the right combination of talent. Um, so we'll see. They're not going to be able to win just by outscoring those teams, right? They'll have to
no,
actually play good hockey. So I'm going to say US is the favorite just because of the level of talent, but it's going to be difficult. And then getting through Sweden, getting through Czechia, getting through Finland, none of those games are going to be easy,
no,
and
they're
they
gonna have to play a well-rounded game. So
right, exactly. So um, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting for sure. I think Cutter Gauthier, I would love to see him lead that group in points and
it's got
you
a
know,
real good chance. So
yeah, take home the medal. And I think he's still due for a big goal scoring game. Because he is a goal scorer and he maybe he's the best goal scorer on the team and he only has 1 goal.
which
So
is
he's
really
kind of
funny if you
yeah,
think about it.
yeah, and he's due. I mean, Snuggerud also is a great goal scorer, so I'm not gonna talk down on him. But again, Cutter's playing that role. I think you're absolutely right. I think he's trying to play that role specifically and just do everything right, which I think shows why Tortorella is going to love this guy because he'll fit into any mold you need him to fit. And if it's to play third line and do some checking, he's going to do it. And I think that's what's really exciting about Cutter is that he has the ability to be a superstar. I know people want to keep
Well, just
talking down like he's not, but he has all of the skill sets to be a superstar in the
yeah,
NHL.
the physical ability too, right? Like
Yeah.
just to add to that, not only the skill, but like he's a big guy, can skate really well for his size, and you're kind of
Yeah.
seeing that too
At,
in the tournament here. So
at the very least, he's going to be a player, he projects to be an all-star NHL player and in
yeah,
all situations. So I think that's really interesting and I'm loving that he's doing it at center. Because we really need another big strong center behind Sean Couturier, which would be an awesome 1-2 punch for us next year. All right. Next on the list, I have is Denver Barkey. We don't really need to go too deep into him. I just wanted to talk about how well he's doing. I brought it up before already, but he's got 19 goals, 33 assists, 52 points in 33 games, a plus 17 as well. That puts him number 6 in the OHL in points per game with a 1.58. Guys, he's behind Quentin Musty, Carson Recoup, Easton Cowan, who's a teammate of his, who's also doing really well, playing less games, understandably so. Dalibor Dvorsky, a high pick from last year's draft, also in 20 games because he's in World Juniors. Also, he also is above him, and then Philip Mazer. It's kind of weird that Denver Barkey didn't get in that group with Canada. Retrospect, maybe they could have needed him. But it's really exciting to see what he's doing. And he seems to be a strong-willed kid. He doesn't make the team and just goes back and just continues to light up the OHL. And it's really exciting to see. And he's doing it without Denver Barkey on his team. Is obviously a big defender for them. So I suspect his production might go up even more. Maybe he'll crawl into the top 5 at some point. But to be number 6 in point per game. And I think where is he in total points? He is number 5. So just about right for him. Again, he's got stiff competition there, but loving this pick by the Flyers and couldn't be happier with a third round pick to be doing this kind of production in his draft plus 1 year.
yeah. For Barkey, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate. Obviously, they can't get to the World Juniors, and if you look at it here, maybe Canada did need the scoring because they're eliminated early in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
But for Barkey, I just think, if anything, just the way that he is, and from interviewing the kid at the draft this past, um, year, you could kind of sense it with his mentality, just the way he was kind of approaching the questions. He definitely seems like a guy who is confident himself, confident in his skills, but also somebody that's going to use that as motivation. Like he's not somebody that's going to take that and kind of dwell on it. He seems like he's going to kind of take that and run with it and say, hey, like if I'm not going to make it this year, then I'm going to make it next season. Kind of
Yeah.
use it as a chip on the shoulder type deal. So it's good to see him continue to produce at the OHL level here because essentially when you look at it that way and the production continues, you see that, hey, that snub from the World Juniors didn't really have an effect on his mentality or his play whatsoever. So I would expect once Oliver Bonk returns, the scoring even continues and can get better, obviously, because they're both on the power play together. And they're without Bonk, that's essentially their power play quarterback on the defensive side of things. So as he returns, potentially even a chance for more scoring and more scoring opportunities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So yeah, you mentioned Bonk. Oliver Bonk was eliminated. He had 3 assists in 5 games for Team Canada. And I'll let you talk about this a little bit. I mean, I think it's a pretty strong performance for a more defensive defenseman. Now, again, he didn't have any goals, but 3 points in 5 games, not bad at all. Again, he does have two-way ability. He's developing it probably will continue to develop it over the next few years. But what do you think about Bonk being attacked online? I think you mentioned something to me earlier, just by Canadian fans, and he, I think, deactivated his account or set it to
I think put it to
private.
private, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, just for anybody who doesn't know, Canada lost a heartbreaking game to Czechia with 11 seconds left. Essentially, what happens on the play is that the Czech player comes into the Canada zone. And pretty much what happens, Bonk is in front of his goalie, not super in front of him, but kind of right by the hash marks in the circle. The shot slightly gets deflected off of Bonk's stick and goes in by the Canada goalie. So really, it's an unfortunate play, and he gets attacked online on his Instagram for it by some Canadian fans, I guess, after what happens. And I think it's just um, it's just crazy that people are going to do that to a guy like such a young guy like and it's just really a game. Like obviously it's you never want to lose, and it's a heartbreaking way to lose, but to go attack somebody on their personal social media because of a hockey game, and the guy's just 18 years old. It's just cowardly, in my opinion, to do
Yeah.
something like that, and just not a way that anybody should really be acting or should be kind of handling themselves in these situations. The last thing that the kid wanted to do is have that happen, right? Like he's not actively trying for that to happen. It's just a game. Obviously, unfortunate situation, but I just think for him, like, and the fact that people are doing that, just it's
I
bullshit and
I
really
think
shouldn't
we're
be
gonna
something.
see. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think we're gonna see more of that. Players just
Yeah.
going private from the very beginning.
Because why deal with that if you don't have to? And he doesn't have, he shouldn't be dealing with that, right? Like the fact that people are doing that, it's just, grow up type of thing. Like I was saying, like it's just a bullshit way to act. And it's not a way that, we want or anybody should really be kind of treating other people, especially when it's, considering a hockey game. At the end of the day, it's a game, right? And to attack a guy like that, it's just not cool, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But for Bonk, I mean, he had a good tournament, despite all of that and despite what happened, right? Like 3 assists in 5 games. He was a +4 in the tournament. He even had some power play time. And mainly what it was for Bonk is just being able to be a good support for his partner. It wasn't just the stats. Like he skates really well. He covers a lot of ice with his skating. He made up for a lot of defensive mistakes from his partner. And he was really good in terms of his physicality and kind of being able to evade oncoming checkers and forecheckers. When I did watch some Canada games, I noticed the most interesting part about Bach's game was when there was guys forechecking in on him, he was able to get in, win those battles, and then get out of the zone quickly with like a first pass. And that's what you want to see, right, from a player on defense, the ability to do something like that, transition the puck up the ice quickly when another team's trying to create offense. While you're in the defensive zone. So I think overall it was a strong tournament for Bonk. Obviously, it's heartbreaking for Canada. Their expectations are to win every single year, right? So for them to go out against Czechia with 11 seconds left before getting to overtime, that's a big stunner of a loss. And nonetheless, there's still no condoning, the what happened to Oliver Bonk and like the attacks that he's getting. But obviously, it's a big, loss here for Canada, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of what team pulls it out now out of Sweden, U.S., Finland, and Czechia. But we'll see. I mean, it's definitely not Canada this year. So
Yeah. No, I totally feel you on that one. And as a US fan, feels a little good. Sorry.
yeah. Hey, I mean, if you looked at it, I think a lot of people, at least me looking at it, I mean, Celebrini, obviously some really good talent on Canada's team, but that US roster, man, is stacked this year. Like just
Yeah.
with Snuggerud, that whole Snuggerud, like Nazar, Hudson, Gauthier, and then you have that whole US NTDP line of Smith, Perreault, and Leonard. Like that's a really hard offense to kind of
Yeah.
tamper and kind of keep off the scoreboard. So
Yeah. 100%. Uh, yeah. So last on the list, we like to close our show with pretty much every single episode with Matvey Michkov update. So Michkov did return. He is playing for Sochi. He's got 2 goals and 1 assist, I believe, since his return. Sochi has been just getting their asses handed to them lately, but he has been one of the primary producers on the team as if he's been all year. And again, he scored some nice ones. I think he had another lacrosse attempt goal.
he did today.
Yeah, today. Was stopped on it, but the guy is coming back and still producing, and that's what's important to me. And I am so hoping he comes over here early. But it's awesome to watch him develop even from overseas and just to see the fact that he's on this generational pace you know, again, we just never had a prospect like this, at least not in the modern era. Not since Eric Lindros of the Flyers had
Yeah.
a guy who's done anything like this in his draft plus 1 year.
No, Michkov, I mean, he had a really good game today. He obviously gets that goal to tie it 1-1 for Sochi. And it was really interesting on that goal because like he kind of stick lifts the guy right in the slot, just like absolutely takes the puck from him and just shoots it right in. And you don't really see stuff like that. So it just shows like, he's surrounded by other players from the other team and somehow steals the puck and then just scores right off the bat. So it's just super skillful play to do
I
that.
think
And
he's gonna
then
be better defensively than people realize too.
yeah, like he's giving me, I mean, not to say he's going to be on the level of Datsuk, but he's giving me vibes of Datsuk just with the IQ and the positioning and stuff like that, and just from what I'm seeing of him.
Yeah.
And that's as a winger too, so that's even kind
He
of
does skate a lot like Datsuk, in my opinion. He's got this like kind of Datsuk
where he's almost
Kucherov
surveying and he's not
mix.
like going, he's not always the fastest, but like, you know what I mean? He's always just taking into account everything that's around him. I think Datsuk and kind of Kucherov have that similar trait to their skating that you kind of mentioned there, Yariv, but
He's still
um
young. He could get a lot faster.
yeah, exactly, right. There's no limit to the development. He's still a only, a 19-year-old at this point.
He just turned
But
19.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, he had a disgusting move in overtime where he like goes in on the goalie and gets a between the legs chance, but before that he absolutely like um kind of unravels the defenseman. He falls over backwards due to the move that Michkov kind of puts out on him in the half circle there before he takes it to the net. And it's just funny that, okay, first you give a really like nice dangle move to get by the defender, and then just a, casual between the legs shot opportunity on the goalie. Like he doesn't score, but I just thought like just a very like talented sequence, just kind of what he's kind of putting together there. But he's just going to continue it at this point, right? Like I'm not surprised whenever I see any highlights or any kind of, crazy lacrosse goal attempts or just looking at the points per game that he's kind of putting up. Just for his age, he's doing something that's not typically done in the KHL, and you can tell, right? He's just an elite talent and elite skill level. And for the Flyers, the sooner they get him here, that much better the team's going to become. So
Yeah, no, I love it. 100%. He's cannot wait. Cannot wait for Michkov to get here. I would.
it's going
I've
to be
never
fun to
been.
watch him on an every night basis, right?
I don't think I've ever been this excited for a prospect before. Not for a Flyers prospect. Never. So
Yeah, I think my last one, I mean, obviously Patrick, and
yeah.
obviously unfortunate Patrick, and then JVR. So,
But I
it's
see,
been
but
a
I thought
while.
Patrick would be like a top player in the league
Yeah.
where, I'm like, oh, he can be a legitimate number one center. Like I've never
Yeah, no one's
experienced,
matched this since Lindros, right?
right. I've never, we have not had a prospect that could be a top five player in the league every year, at least
No, definitely
production
not.
wise. And due to other teams, what McDavid does to us, right? Like,
Yeah.
so
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like you got to look at it from this perspective, just to kind of end off here. The Flyers have a team right now that consistently plays a certain style. They have an identity, and they don't have that, guy or those skilled players that on any shift can kind of take over. Like they have
it's
Travis
like
Konechny who can do
TK.
it. You could do it
Yeah.
from time to time, but he can't do it to the level that a Nathan McKinnon can do it, or a Connor
Right.
McDavid, or the
Right. Right. Right.
Kucherov can do it. Whereas Michkov, just based on what he's doing in the KHL and just like how he looks like kind of when comparing the eye test to the stats, he seems like he's going to be that player who can, be on the level of, a top five type of
Franchise.
player in the league. And, if you add a skilled player like that to a team that already has this competitive nature, has an identity to their game, and now you have a guy that can take over on any given night and kind of win the game for you, like you're looking at a real dangerous team.
Yeah.
So for the Flyers, once he kind of gets into the mix here, like it's going to be all steam ahead, I think, just based on where they're going and what kind of team they can become. Because already they're looking like a team that's, like we said before the beginning of the season, they're on the playoff bubble without that type of player. So what happens when you add a player like that,
Yeah.
right?
Him and Cutter Gauthier
Exactly.
will be very exciting. All right, that's us. That's the entire show. Anything you want to add to our audience?
No, I'm just gonna continue to have articles out as we go through, the back half of the season here. We're gonna have some cool content coming as well. I'll be going to the All-Star game. That's going to be in Toronto, so we'll try to get some good stuff from the All-Star game and things like that, and then even more stuff as the season kind of goes along. So it's been a good season so far, and excited for the second half here after Christmas.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just to remind everybody, we should be having Bill Meltzer on for next week's episode, so look forward to that. I'm looking forward to that. We haven't had Bill on a little bit here. We don't do guests at all as often as we used to. But we'll have Bill on, and then we'll have Steve on again at the end of January to give us an update on the World Juniors. So that'd be cool to get the full breakdown of that. Again, just want to remind everybody, please like, subscribe, hit the share button, hit the like button, do that whole thing for us. Hit the notification or hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on Spotify, follow us on iTunes, give us a rating on iTunes. All of that is a humongous help. And again, if you can share it out for us, also humongous help. And also a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. And you can use DoorDash to do it. All right. Thanks, buddy. Another great episode. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. We love you guys. And remember, always stay pretty.